Hey everybody, Thanksgiving is upon us, and of course we know that means the 3 F's. Family, friends, and feasting! So, in situations where there's just entirely too much food to deal with, we know who to call around here, don't we? That's right. Today, we're going to start with a little appetizer of Kirby. We'll be taking a look at the very first Kirby game ever released, Kirby's Dreamland on the Game Boy. So let the feast begin. And let's get started. Today we'll be looking at the version of this game available through the Nintendo Switch Online service for Game Boy. Here it is, Kirby's Dreamland. And we start off in green greens, as one typically does with a Kirby game. Anyone who's played a Kirby game before, this is all going to look pretty familiar. The one thing that really stands out here is just how good these graphics actually look on the Game Boy. I mean, my experience with the Game Boy, a lot of things don't look that great, but in fairness, this is a little bit later in its life cycle. Ah yes, stars. The star riding mechanic will be here in spades, and I think that's great. That is one of those things that's just quintessentially Kirby. And here is our first mini-boss. I want to say Poppy Jr.? You know what though, this is old enough, that might be Poppy Sr. or Grandpoppy, for that matter. Oh well, he didn't last long. And that brings us to our first real boss. The ever-classic Wispy Woods. In his first appearance here. His attacks are nothing to write home about, as is typically the case with Wispy Woods. He blows a little wind now and then, not too hard to dodge. He then drops apples, which are really more to his detriment than any sort of a threat. And yeah, that's kind of all there is to him. Kirby wins, splits into 3, as a Kirby does, and we're on to level 2. I will point out that unlike some of the later games in the series, each level is just one stage, so you're not going to get quite as much content as you might be accustomed to, but again, first outing. And that brings us to level 2, Lolo's Castle, or Lolo's Castle, if you played the old classic NES game. Not entirely sure how Lolo came to control the castle, kind of thought he was trapped in it. Also not quite sure why he's an enemy, but he is a repeating enemy in the Kirby series, and that's okay. This is home to some of, well, really probably the most disturbing regular enemies in the Kirby series. In fairness, some of the end bosses are literally eldritch horrors, but most things in the series are kind of happy and dreamlike. Not always the case here. You see these little weird mummy things, the ghosts. This would be a very fitting Halloween level. Oh, star again. That's fun. You might have also noticed that mask earlier in here. I really remember those from Mario 2, but yeah. Weird, kind of creepy. And here comes Lolo, who attacks, as a Lolo does, by pushing treasure chests around. If you've played the NES game, you'll recognize this. Pushing stuff around is pretty much what that game is all about, so this does make sense. This first round, he's serving as his own mini-boss. Not too bad. It'll get a little bit more intense a bit later on. More ghosts. Oh, and we're going to run into one of the power-ups in this game. While Kirby doesn't absorb powers, he does find power-ups. Like this curry. Yep, he's eaten the curry, which has given him the ability to spit fireballs. Didn't discover that for a second, but that's okay. He'll run around, spit fireballs at anything that threatens him, and have a really good time just burning stuff, while apparently suffering some pretty strong mouth discomfort after eating that curry. Ah, and here we are, the boss fight. Lolo and Lala, or Lolo and Lala if you prefer. This one is a bit trickier until you figure out to just kind of go back and forth through one little platform, which I decided to do much later in the game than I should have. In any case, there they were, and the next star is claimed. Once again, Kirby splits in 3. Stage 3, the Float Islands. This level is home to some limited water gameplay, and limited is the best thing I can say about it. in this game in particular, Kirby is just useless underwater. He hasn't yet figured out his water spout ability. He'll, I think, gain some inspiration later in the game, but I won't spoil that surprise for you. It is interesting to note, we see here Waddle Dee. His signature attack was actually first used by that clam rather than him, so while that's most associated with Waddle Dee, technically these clams started it. Not that Kirby can do anything with it at this point, but later in the series that becomes a pretty iconic ability. Complete with a fun jester hat. Here's that water I warned you about. His abilities in it are basically limited to just swimming around a little bit, which doesn't really have its own animation, it just sort of looks like he's jumping. And back into the fun cave of spikes, above, below, floating around. Good time. You'll see as this game goes along, while it is a Kirby game, it's not particularly hard. It does offer a lot more opportunities to run into things that can hurt you as the game progresses. Oh good, more curry and a pirate ship. Great combination. Spitting fire and pirates. And flying squids for some reason. But yeah. Off we go, avoiding the cannons, avoiding these flappy, fly enemies. Always a Kirby staple. Not exactly sure what they're called, but they're not my favorite thing. I will point out there are no shortage of opportunities for one-ups. And health. Oh, this is fun. Next time someone asks you, you remember that time Kirby got stuck in a whale's blowhole? Now you'll be able to say, yeah, I do. You're welcome. And I can only imagine he will never forget that experience, as he learns to do the water spout himself in later games. Yep, that whale snotted him all the way into the clouds, where he found a lemon, I guess? Oh, heads up for when y'all give this a try. The lemon doesn't make you invincible. It just gives you the ability to endlessly fire air blasts. As lemons do. Anyway, he's taken on some pirates on the high seas. Now he gets the opportunity to fight some air pirates. And there they go. Star collected, and once again our hero splits in three. And with that, Kirby's sky adventures continue in the bubbly clouds, full of Kirbys. Pretty standard cloud level. This is a great opportunity for me to demonstrate ways to lose a life when you absolutely shouldn't. Some of it is that this was my first time going through the level, and that's fine, but really, a lot of this is just inexcusable. Yep, how to lose a life when you didn't need to. And here we have the first instance of parasols. Great fun in later games. Here, they're more or less just decoration. And apparently they can keep cannons aloft somehow. It must be very windy. Oh. Sir Kibble. This is actually one of my favorite abilities in later games, but here, you know, just another thing to avoid. Then we have some squishy wind oni, I guess? They can be a little bit hard to avoid in this cloud maze. That and the, I guess, flying pencil creature over there. I don't love the flying pencil creature. And here we go. Speaking of eldritch horrors, here is a disembodied eyeball that shoots cannonballs. It gets stronger later on, but for its first iteration, yep, this is what you get. Spinny little eyeball, shoots cannonballs, and waddle-doos. I guess the eyeball connection kind of makes sense, but it still seems a little bit weird that it can just produce those things. Nevertheless, the battle goes on. And mini-boss Eyeball is defeated. And with that, Kirby has gone yet further up. I'm going to say the bubbly clouds are in the past, and now we're somewhere in the stratosphere. The stars seem very close. And we got Lemon as well as Curry this level, so Kirby's just having a feast. Very fitting with Thanksgiving season. And here it is. The real fight with our strange eyeball cloud friend. Creator of the Waddle Doo. Shocking spike eye. I don't know, I mean, you can see what it is. It's what it is. What you see is what you get. Spiky eyeball, cloud, lots of electricity, I guess? Anyway, it's done. 3 Kirbys once again, and onward to the 5th level, Mount DDD. Or Dedede? Yeah. Anyway, it's time for us to meet the Duck King in his lair. It seems slightly upset for some reason. Here we are. Man, it's a good thing King DD isn't a narcissist. Anyway, this isn't so much a level as just 4 little mini levels with some boss rush thrown in. And I've gone ahead and just shown you what happens in the case of losing all lives here, because I did manage that once while playing this. No punishment really to speak of, you just have to restart the level you're on from the beginning with 4 lives. Pretty light punishment, easy enough to beat the game. Even with that little delay, I still beat this thing in under an hour, so it doesn't take a whole lot of time. Anyway, here we are, back to Lololo and Lalala. This is definitely the way to fight them, should that come up. Just kind of bounce up and down, you'll get there. This is probably my biggest annoyance with Nintendo Switch Online. As you can see, it gives you hints that just won't go away until you follow them. So, not ideal, but kind of a minor complaint for getting to play this essentially for free. Very cheap. Back to our friend, Wispy Woods. As you can see, these are all fast-forwarded because we've seen this all before. I will say the levels can be a little bit annoying. They're really just an opportunity to lose health before going into a boss fight, which isn't perfect, but kind of a minor complaint overall. Boss rushes, in general, sometimes feel like just artificially adding difficulty or length to a game, but at the same time, one of my favorite series is Mega Man, so I don't know that I really have any room to complain about that. Alright, on to the last of the 4 bosses. Save this one for last because it is absolutely my favorite boss this game. It's just a real change of pace, going from a standard platformer to a little shooter here. Ooh, it's getting close. He only has 1 health. How do we think he'll do? Ah, spoiler. Alright, and now Kirby gets to face the heavyweight champion of Dreamland. A crazed duck with a hammer. Self-proclaimed king, King DDD. I will say, this is one of those bosses that probably lends himself best to just not using an ability most times, so he fits really well here. I think this is also the only time he's the real final boss. And on it goes. Oh, and there it is. Goodbye, King DDD. I think that might actually be the only time he's the real final boss in a Kirby game. But, good fun. Kirby has collected all 5 stars, and used his immense dream power to inflate into a giant balloon and steal King DDD's castle. And here we go, folks. This is the reason Kirby went through everything he's done in this game. It wasn't to save Dreamland. Dreamland probably wasn't even threatened. King DDD just had a lot of food. And the worst part is, we don't even know, was that Kirby's food? Or was that DDD's? And his goal here was just to rob this poor duck creature just hanging out in his own castle. Oh well, at least he leaves it in the air instead of letting it smash into the ground. And in the end, it's raining food. The grand feast goes on, and it looks like 1,000 clones of Kirby are waiting there to just enjoy all the fruits of his labor. And there it is. If you want to play again, there's an extra game, which adds a little difficulty. So, how was our little Kirby hors d'oeuvre? His very first outing, let's keep in mind, for the original Game Boy. With all that in mind, it was really good. The graphics are amazing for the hardware. The gameplay is fun. Now, obviously, the glaring omission of Kirby's ability to eat and absorb his enemy's powers, it leaves something lacking for those of us who have grown accustomed to that over many, many years of that being a regular mechanic. But if you can overlook that, the game itself is great. It's a solid platformer. Again, very nice graphics. I would argue that relative to the hardware, these graphics actually beat the graphics on the NES Kirby's Adventure. So that's kind of an accomplishment in and of itself. Again, this is Kirby's start. So while he's in his infancy here, his abilities are great. I like to think of it as, you know, he just kind of awakened. He hasn't figured out his powers yet. And thankfully, Nintendo has made this an easy one to experience. This is currently available on the Nintendo Switch Online service. So if you're subscribed, you can check it out at no additional cost. Again, great fun. It's a great window into, again, the old school Kirby. So yeah, definitely give that a try. Thanks everybody, and happy Thanksgiving.